From To Keto LLC, it's Keto Woman Podcast with Daisy Brackenhall.
Hello Keto Lovelies, I'm Daisy Brackenhall and I've spent most of my life struggling with my weight and confidence and have always had a difficult relationship with food. Even when I finally got to my target weight after weight loss surgery and eating low carb, I couldn't maintain it and I was miserable. Keto has given me the freedom to fall in love with food again without the constant gain, loss, guilt, virtue cycle of before. Health and happiness is where it's at now, running on fat. Welcome to the Keto Woman Podcast. Each week I'll be chatting to inspirational women, maybe even the odd man, to discover the secrets to their success so that I can share them with you. So what is keto? Keto is a way of eating that enables you to switch your body's main fuel source from sugar to fat. Who doesn't want to be a fat burner, right? But how do we achieve this? A great place to start is by keeping carbs to 20 grams or less per day. So things like leafy greens and above ground vegetables, plus some nuts and seeds, and the incidental carbs you find in things like dairy. Moderate protein, scale to your lean body mass, and then fat to satiety. Once you're in the swing of things, you can tweak it to suit you, make your own personalised keto. I'll be asking my guests each week what their keto looks like to show you just how flexible and fabulous this way of eating can be. I'm not a doctor, and most of my guests won't be either, so we can't give you medical advice. It's always best to work with your own doctor because they know you and your medical history, and so have access to the bigger picture. Thanks to Becky Cordill for supporting me and this podcast by making a pledge at my Patreon page. Do you want to hear your name here at the top of the show? Are you enjoying this podcast and would like to help me make more episodes? Then head to my Patreon page at patreon.com/KetoWoman or hit the support button on the Keto Woman Podcast website. It means a great deal to me and you will get to headline the show just like Becky did today. Please help other people hear about and find this podcast by reviewing it on iTunes and Facebook. Every star, preferably 5 of course, and review helps. It doesn't go unnoticed by me, the people who regularly like, share and comment on my posts. Your support means the world to me and really does make a big difference. Thank you. This week's extraordinary woman is Chrissie Bowie. Chrissie is a 51-year-old triathlete successfully competing within her age group and specialising in the longer course events. She's a high school teacher as well as teaching Taekwondo and also trains in Hapkido and Kumdo. She has 2 beautiful grown-up daughters. She loves to grow and ferment her own food as well as foraging and discovering new foods. Since removing most of the carbs from her diet, Chrissie has enjoyed success in numerous endurance events and has found that post-race and training recovery have improved dramatically. The highlight for her, so far, was qualifying for and then participating in the World Ironman Championship in Kona, Hawaii, 2016. She constantly seeks to improve her performance and find ways to tweak her nutrition strategy for training and racing. Her goal is to maximise her health potential in order to prolong physical and mental longevity. Chrissie realised after recording the podcast that she got one of her races muddled up. She talks about struggling to get her wetsuit off in Hawaii, but realised it was way too warm there for a wetsuit, so it must have been the Port Mac Ironman. Most of us, of course, wouldn't have noticed, but apparently fellow triathletes will and wonder why she was wearing a wetsuit in Hawaii. I must admit to being rather awestruck by Chrissie and her incredible feats of endurance, and I'm excited to share our conversation with you. So let's go to that interview now. Welcome, Chrissie, to the Keto Women Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, thanks.
So you are in Australia, is that right? You're in Australia, I'm in France.
Yep, Brisbane, Australia.
And I gather it's pretty hot there. You've got it early in the morning, but it's still pretty hot.
It's quite a nice day today compared to yesterday. I came off the track yesterday and it was 40.2 degrees. And I thought, oh, that's hot enough. this morning it's lovely. It's quite early, so I'm getting a nice fresh air this morning.
That's the thing, isn't it? I'm not really a morning person, but when I do occasionally get up in the mornings, especially in the summer, it's lovely. And I wish I really could be a morning person and experience that more, because it's nice, isn't it? It's just a fresh new part of the day.
And you feel kind of special, especially when you can see the sunrise. You feel like, a lot of people are in bed and missing out on it, and it sets you up for a great day, I think.
It's quite a thing, isn't it, in Australia, the getting up early. Lots of people get up early and train before work.
Oh, you have to train before work in Brisbane, particularly in the summertime. And I know a lot of European people who come over and train with my triathlon club. They can't believe how many people are out at 5:30 in the morning running around the river or cycling up and down Mount Cootha. Everybody's out. If I went out into the street right now, and now it's like 6:30, people are all finishing. They're all finishing their rides and they're heading off to the coffee shops, and the coffee shops are all open.
That's incredible. So. It's just a whole different setup, isn't it, from other places?
I guess so, and I get confused. I've been down to Melbourne and on holidays to visit my daughter when she was living down there, and I'd get up early in the morning, same at 5:30. There's nobody around. And in New Zealand as well. I was over in Christchurch one time, and I thought, I'll go for a run. So I get up early and I'm running around, and there's not a soul until about 8:30. What's going on?
Oh, I see. As an outsider, I had this image that it was the whole of Australia. So it's not everywhere in Australia. It's just certain parts.
I think down south, I think they like to sleep in a little bit more.
Right. That sounds more like my cup of tea. Anyway, we digress, talking about weather and early mornings. So why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, I've always enjoyed playing sport or being active, and I always sort of ran, and I got into triathlon. I did some swimming. My daughter said to me one day, when she was quite young, we should go to the pool. Let's go to the pool. So I thought, well, actually, I'm just running all the time. So doing a bit of swimming will be good to break up the running. And so I did that. And I wasn't a great swimmer, but eventually I've taught myself to swim longer and longer and longer, listening to different people speak about, techniques and things like that. So my swimming improved. And then I eventually got a bike, and some friends were riding bikes, and I enjoyed riding the bikes, so I thought I'll put them together and I'll start triathlon. And then I competed in a few triathlons, and I did pretty much what everyone does. You carbo load before you do a race, and they actually, in your race kit or the bag that they give you, comes gels and power bars and things like that for you to fuel during the race. And I thought this seemed to work fine for like the standard distance races, but I realized that my strength is more in endurance, and if you're doing a longer race, so a standard race would take me about 2.5 hours, but a longer distance race would be up over 5 hours. You can't be just sucking down sugar, which is just staying in your stomach and absorbing all the water into your stomach so that you want to vomit all the time. I needed a better strategy to fuel my races, and that's got me started into the idea of low carb and and doing a ketogenic diet, basically trying to improve my performance in endurance races. Yeah. Right.
So how long ago did you start getting into triathlons?
I did my first triathlon, I think, in 2013 at Mooloolaba up the Sunshine Coast. And I look back at some of the photos in there, and I can see the look on my face coming out of the water when somebody had taken a photo of me coming out of the water, and I was just like, my mind was going, yay, I finished my first swim in a triathlon. Yes. And then coming off the bike, oh my goodness, I've finished the bike. And then at the end, it's just such a great feeling, and it's very, very addictive.
It sounds like it. So let's just explain what a triathlon is and the different distances, because I've been looking into this. Someone was telling me all about their experience with triathlons, and I was talking about having started this Couch to 5K, and they were saying, you should have a go at triathlons. They're great fun, but there are different levels, aren't there? And different lengths for each level. So the standard triathlon, tell us about the standard triathlon.
Okay, a standard triathlon, you start with a 1.5 kilometre swim, and then you jump on your bike, and it's a 40 kilometre bike ride, and then you get off your bike. Meantime, in between these sections, you've got this thing called transition. I'm not very good at transition. But anyway, so that's where you kind of put your shoes on, put your sunglasses on, and get on your bike.
Get your wetsuit off, which must be a feat in itself.
Yeah, sometimes you wear a wetsuit if you go down south, or if you do one in winter time. It's always kind of funny up in Queensland if it's a wetsuit event.
And presumably having to jostle with loads of other people as well. It's not, it's not just a case of having plenty of space to do it all by yourself. You've got, hundreds of other people.
And there are particular races. I'll talk about it a bit later, I guess, but I was really impressed in Hawaii in the World Championships. They actually help you take your wetsuit off. It's like, oh, thank you, because there's so many photos. They have those professional photographers at events that take your photo, and every single photo of me coming out of the water where I'm wearing a wetsuit, my arms are twisted behind my back, and as I'm trying to get this wetsuit off because the zip's at the back.
And then so you end with a run, don't you? So you start with the 1.2 swim, then you do a 40k bike ride,
and then a 10k run. I kind of find that quite hectic, but there are shorter ones. There's sprint distance.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the one I was looking at. I don't think I could even manage a standard one.
I can't imagine doing the sprint distance. I've never done any of those sprint distance ones because I feel like by the time I get warmed up, the race will be over.
Yeah, I can appreciate that for an athlete like yourself. And it really is a sprint for me when I can't imagine yet being able to do 5K. I haven't got that far in the program yet, but that seems like long distance endurance to me. So
I think it's mostly the mind, it's not so much that your human body can do it. You can do it. You just got to teach your mind that you can do that. And until you can imagine it, then it does seem amazing. But that 5K, I reckon most people who start try to go too hard. It doesn't matter whether you're swimming, cycling, or running, or anything. You've got to pace yourself. And I think it's a good idea to get a heart rate monitor and just go at a pace that's appropriate for your fitness level, and have patience, because over time you'll be going faster at that same heart rate.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've noticed. I've got a monitor, one of these things that shows you where you've been, and it gives you all your stats like your pace and this, that and the other, and your heart rate. And I've noticed that my heart rate has come down, doing pretty well the same thing, actually getting harder week on week.
Oh, that's great.
But I found it easier, so that it just shows it's that whole repetitive thing. And that's the whole point with the Couch to 5K. They take you through it very slowly.
And can I just suggest that you keep it consistent? Just be consistent. On a day, you'll have a day. Don't make excuses for yourself. That's the problem. People make excuses. So I like to just have a schedule and stick to that schedule. For me, today is lucky it's my rest day, but I'm not, like on the weekend, the opportunity is there for me to do extra training. And if I can make excuses, I'm feeling a bit off, it's a bit hot or whatever. You can do all of that and justify it in your mind, or you can just go, this is what I'm doing, I'm going to do it. And you have to think about that person at the end that you're going to be at the end of the training session, how that sense of satisfaction and achievement. So, yeah, be consistent. Even if you go out and it's crappy and your foot's sore and it's really hot, at the end, you went through all of that, you're happy. It's satisfying. So, yeah, don't make excuses and sometimes you just got to go, oh, well, I'm going to be really slow today, and be slow.
It's very true, actually. I've often thought that when I'm sitting there and it's about the time and I'm thinking, right, I'm going to have to go now because it's going to get dark. It's the middle of winter here, so it gets dark quite early. And I don't want to be running on the roads around me in the dark because I'm in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, and would stand a good chance of getting run over, basically. So it's good to go while it's light, and it's getting to that time, and it's cold and it's a bit drizzly, and I'm thinking, oh no, I don't really want to do this, but it's like, no, you're going to do it. It's half an hour. That's all it is, and you're going to feel great when you come back. And so, I put all my kit on and I plug my earphones in and listen to my music, and I get out there and you're absolutely right. The feeling you have when you're coming back, even if you've ended up getting soaking wet and it's cold and you feel miserable, from that point of view, you feel fantastic because you've done it.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes for me, if it rains at the end of my run or at the end of my bike, I feel even more special. It's like a reward. I've cooled down and I've experienced some different weather,
Yeah, we're at opposite ends of the scale. Cold here and hot there. Do you train all year, or is it a seasonal thing?
Oh yeah, I train all year because I enjoy it. The season is generally summer. It seems really crazy, but summer, that's when all the races are, or most of the races. But it seems like there are things in winter as well. But yeah, there are some just runs that run through, like a lot of the marathons are in winter here. Not that I really do though. Oh, I guess I do sometimes do some marathons, but less of the triathlons are through the winter time.
It does seem like an extra level of endurance having to do the triathlon, but also to do it in quite extreme hot temperatures. That sounds like, dialing the challenge up, however many, the percentage scale.
I think I prefer the heat. I tell myself that I have an advantage over others. Others suffer the heat worse than me. I don't. That's what I tell myself. I train in the heat and I enjoy the heat. I went down to Melbourne, I think it was like 2015. There was a race down there. My cousin sort of encouraged me to come down and stay with her. She was the one that got me into triathlon. She was like, what are you doing physically to challenge yourself, Chrissie? Get into triathlon. So I get into it. And then I end up being addicted to it worse than her. Anyway, I went down to Melbourne, and it's February. Now, up here in February, it's the hottest month of the year. It's, typically mid-30s. I went down to Melbourne. It was quite warm, and I was surprised by how warm it was. On the day of the triathlon, I'm standing on the beach in a wetsuit in February, shivering. I had to get a hot cup of coffee to warm myself up. I'm shivering on the beach in my wetsuit. Unheard of. I've never shivered in my wetsuit. And then I'm looking at, it's supposed to be like flat water. I can't remember the name of the beach. It's supposed to be flat. But there's a storm out to sea. So it's surf. It's really rough. And there was people pulling out of the race, or pulling out of the swim. They were just going to do the bike and the the run and not get an overall time, but get the time for those segments, because the water was pretty rough. And in fact, when I was actually swimming that race, I remember I swam past the first marshal, which was the marshals are out there. You got these turn buoys, so you don't just swim in a straight line. There's always some weird swim, so like an M shape or a U shape, something that you've got to keep. The yellow buoys on your right and the orange buoys on your left they give you some instructions that you've got to remember in the panic of it all. Anyway.
That sounds confusing. Why can't you just have a straight, out and back?
A straight line would be good, yeah.
There must be a reason for it, but I can't think what it would be.
There
or a U shape.
Reasons.
I could understand a straightforward, U shape. Yeah. So you go out and you go along and then you come back. But
no. Let's do an M shape and confuse them all.
Yeah. Let's make it really complicated.
Yeah. Back to the story. Yeah. So I'm standing on the beach shivering. I got my goggles in my hands, and then they say, okay, my category was ready to start, and they do this big horn to get you going. Anyway, so I've got my cap on. I go to pull my goggles on, and they snap. I've come from Brisbane, flown down with my bike on an aeroplane. The logistics are pretty, out there. Anyway, so I'm standing on the beach with broken goggles looking at this rough water and all the people in my division or category running into the water, not me. I'm standing there going, oh no, my goggles are broken. I held them up in the air, and a lady came running up and she gave me her goggles. She goes, I'm not swimming. Take mine. Oh, how wonderful is that? And I tried to return the goggles. I could never find her again. There's, thousands of people. So anyway, I go out, I'm swimming. I go past that first marshal, and she's, this lady on a surfboard, and she's at the first turn buoy. I go around the second turn buoy, and then I go around this M shape, the third turn buoy. Oh, it's funny. She must have a twin. There's the lady who looks like the first marshal. No. And on the way to that actual, what I believe to be the third turn, I had all these blokes, because, wave after wave go. So I'm swimming and I'm hitting blokes. I'm thinking to myself, they're going the wrong way. No. Oh, no. No. Chrissie, you're the idiot going the wrong way. So anyway, it was quite funny. And I remember that I had the worst cramps in my calves as I was coming in out of the water finally. I had to just ball myself up, because every time I tried to put my foot down on the ground, my calves would cramp so badly. I didn't move my legs enough, I don't think.
So you had an extra long swim then?
A little bit longer swim. By now it's pouring down rain. It's still quite dark down there in Melbourne. It's pouring down rain. I get to my bike. There are my running shoes and my bike shoes. They're all at the transition in about 2 inches of water. You weren't allowed to put plastic over any of your stuff, because the wind would blow and, it can be dangerous. So all your stuff's wet.
Oh, no. So you've got to put on wet stuff at the transition. Oh, nightmare.
Yeah. And, it's February. I had not expected that it would be cold. It was freezing. I get on the bike, finally, after getting my wetsuit off, overcoming the cramps in my calves as I do it, I get on the bike and I think I can't feel my fingers, I can't feel my arms, can't feel my legs. I look at the other competitors from Melbourne and they've got their little jackets on and things like that. I thought, who would have thought to put a jacket in February? It's pouring down rain. I'm freezing cold. The whole bike. I remember I actually cried. I was so cold. I thought I've come all the way down here and I can't even feel my legs. This is not fun. Anyway, and eventually I just thought, well, it's pouring down rain. Let's just concentrate on staying on the bike and not having a crash. Because there was 180 turns and I thought, it's so wet. The conditions are so hard. Don't come off the bike. Concentrate. And I wonder whether being so cold actually improved my performance because I couldn't tell if my legs were sore because I couldn't feel them. Anyway, when I finally got off the bike, oh, thank goodness that's over, I started running in my wet shoes. The sun came out and it was steamy and it was really, really, really hot. And that's pretty typical of Melbourne. I think, it's freezing cold and hot and windy and everything in that one day. How lucky. At the end, I felt so fantastic.
Yeah, everyone was literally steaming, I should imagine, when they were finishing the race.
Yes. And, that was the last race I did that I took gels. The carbohydrate concentrate that are in gels. And I remember they were giving out gels at every water station. They always do. And I took them every single time. I put them down my shirt and kept running. Every chance I was sucking them down, thinking, I need this energy. It's going to make me faster. And at the end, I just remember how sore my guts were. I felt I need to get over that line. I needed to find a toilet.
Yeah, that sounds a bit grim. But tell us more about the kind of triathlons you do, because you don't do a standard triathlon, do you?
Well, that one, I like to do the longer course ones. So I guess most of the triathlons that I do are they're about twice as long as the standard. So I've got a couple of races coming up. I've got one on the 4th of Feb out at Gundawindi, and that one's a 2-kilometre swim, and it's in the McIntyre River. So you swim against the current and for 1 kilometre, and then you swim back with the current for another kilometre. Then we're on our bike for 80 kilometres out at Gundawindi, it's dead snakes and horses along this country road, which is used generally by big trucks. So it's the road. The road's not too bad, but yeah, you have to keep your eyes up, and because if you hit a pothole or hit something, it can be quite dangerous. So that's an 80k bike ride, and then it's the run's a 20k run. And then the other distance that I do is what's called a half Ironman. The half Ironman's a 1.9k swim, 90k bike ride, and a 21k run. And then the main event that I like to train for is Ironman. So the Ironman, I love the Ironman. The Ironman's a 3.8 kilometre swim, and then a 180k bike, and then a 42k run. So it's a marathon at the end of.
I was going to say, yes, I can't remember I can't remember how that translates in all of them. I think it's something like 112 mile bike ride, and then the marathon, of course, is 26 miles, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I don't really think in miles.
No, yeah. I don't much anymore. I'm just trying to sort of translate it for those.
That's why they call the half Ironman a 70.3, because it's 70.3 miles altogether.
Right.
So double that, and that's the Ironman.
That is a massive feat of endurance. Roughly how long does that take to do overall?
Well, my best time was under 11 and a half hours in Port Macquarie in New South Wales, and that was my first Ironman. Got me really addicted. And then I did, and I qualified in that first race. I can remember thinking before the race, okay, I've done all this training. Well, it'd be really good if I hope I finish. I hope that I get through the whole thing, Just do each thing. Do the swim, just get through the swim. Think of the swim when you're doing the swim. Do the bike. Enjoy the bike. And then, but conserve, Chrissie. You've got that run at the end. And at the end, it was the most amazing feeling. And I did that race. I think it was about the day before or the day after my 50th birthday. And I sort of, how you feel a bit lucky around your birthday. So it was a really great gift to myself. And it was even better because that first race, I got second in my age category. And I thought, you do these races and they have what they call qualifying slots to go to the World Championships. And generally in the old ducks slot, there'll be one slot, one opportunity. So you've sort of got to win to get a slot to go to Hawaii. Anyway, so I went to the presentations and what's called roll down, where they offer up the slots. So if the person who won doesn't take the slot to go to Hawaii, then you can nominate to go. If you got second, they'll call you. That's why it's called roll down. Anyway, I had a look on they had tables and charts on the walls at the roll down ceremony, and it said there was a table there and it said 2 slots in my category. Oh my goodness, 2 slots. Oh my goodness. I went over and I thought there has to be a mistake because I saw it online. It said there was 1 slot. So I'll go and check with the admin people. And because there was extra entrants and they had cancelled another race somewhere, like in Malaysia or something, they made 2 slots in my category. And so I got to go to Hawaii.
Awesome.
So, the Hawaii took me over 12 hours. Hawaii was quite a bit different to Port Macquarie. Port Macquarie is not an easy race. It's what they call definitely an honest race. But when I got to Hawaii and I got off the plane, I was shocked. I thought, oh my goodness, because in the southern hemisphere, we're in the opposite climate, and I get off the plane in Hawaii, I'm near the equator, and it was so steamy. I thought, oh my goodness, better get out there and do a bit of training in this. So
yeah, humidity can be really draining, can't it?
I don't know how people train I guess they do. There are ways of doing it. A friend of mine had a photo, it was in a magazine of him in the bathroom at home with, the steam going on his training on his bike on a trainer to acclimatise for when you're travelling from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere and adjusting to the different climatic conditions.
Right. Yeah. Have someone, point a boiling kettle at you or something while you're training away. So which is your favourite and least favourite element of the triathlon? Because most people seem to think that the swimming is the hardest bit, the bit that they don't want to do the most.
I used to think that. I'm pretty small and swimming, I do swim a lot, but I usually, every time I go to the pool, I tell myself, now you have to do some hard efforts in here, but I always tend to use the swimming as a way of recovering from running and cycling. Where I will always put something hard in a run, even if it's going to be an easy run, I'll do at least a couple of kilometres in there, where I'll get my heart rate, really push my heart rate. Swimming, it is hard in the training to psych yourself up to do some hard efforts. But before the swim, you just hope that it's all going well and don't think about that horrible time down in Melbourne. But while you're actually swimming, it's the most peaceful time of the race, I think, if you break away from your group, that is. It wasn't like that in Hawaii. That was 3.8 kilometres of washing machine and just hoping that you're not going to lose your goggles with somebody slapping you and kicking. And it's that all I could see was white. And I can remember training. We got to Kona and I thought, I'll do this swim, see what it's like. And it was beautiful. I look like you get in the water and I can see coral and beautiful fish and different fish to what we see here. I'm a biology teacher and we take kids up to Heron Island every second year. And we have really good coral here, but I was quite amazed in Kona how beautiful that was. But on the day of the race, didn't see anything. All I saw was, bubbles and white. And I just kept going. And it was lucky that I just kept with the group because there was so much splash. I could, when you practice, you look for signs that, like, points along the horizon that you're going to sight from. And I couldn't see anything. So I just try to keep with the group and just follow. And then, that's the end point. Oh, good. We're out. It seems to go so quickly. I guess for me, my worst part is transition, and especially if there's a wetsuit involved, I just can't seem to get it off quickly. And I always have this, the night before when you're thinking through the race, you always think, don't forget your sunglasses. Don't forget to, you feel like you're going to forget to do something. Because if you get on that bike and you haven't got your sunglasses, I did a race at Bustleton in start of December, and we were riding and some big stuff hit you in the face. And if I didn't have my sunglasses on, that would have been really, really dangerous. Yeah. So, I like when I'm on the bike, I guess also towards the end, I just want to get off. My bum gets very, very sore.
Right. So it must be quite nice. Probably with each element, when you transition to the next, it's a different movement. So it must be quite a relief, actually, to go from one to the other, especially with the two, with the long elements. So like you say, you've got a bit of a sore bum from being on your bike for all that time. It must be quite nice to then loosen up and go into a run.
Yeah. You start the run and you think, oh, come on, Chrissie, legs, work. Just, you feel like you're just taking these little shuffly steps. But, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. You've just spent all this time using your legs, and now you've got to use your legs again. I mean, people train all year to run a marathon on its own, but you're running a marathon after doing a swim and doing this incredibly long bike ride, and then you run your marathon. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, it is. And if it wasn't incredible, then it wouldn't be all that valuable. So the harder something is to do.
Yeah, that's true. You must feel amazing when you finish that.
Yeah. And I think the first one is you'll never feel as fantastic as finishing your first Ironman, I think. I remember I came back to work and my friends from work, they all stood up as I walked in. Somebody must have said, she's here. And they all stood up and clapped as I walked in. And I was on a high for weeks, just thinking, yep, I did it. I didn't think I could do it, but I did it.
I bet.
And then having qualified too was awesome.
Fantastic. So presumably when you started triathlons, even though you were still carb loading and things, you probably did, you would have focused on your diet and what you were eating. Presumably you were eating reasonably healthily.
Even as a kid, my mum always grew vegetables. We had our own chooks, and I was a beekeeper as a kid. We were just into producing everything. My mum cooked everything. We always took our lunch to school. We didn't have biscuits in the cupboard at home, but we did do, we always had such a good breakfast. I remember, we would have cereal backed up with always eggs or baked beans. So we had a cooked breakfast and cereal. So my mum, I think, coming from a more rural background, always believed in a big breakfast. We always took our lunch to school and always had healthy, good meals for dinner. And I just always continued that through my life. And I guess I strongly believe that you should, like, I'd go running and then I would eat a lot of fruit and a lot of like cereal or, carbohydrate-based breakfast straight after. And I was always hungry, always starving, and almost to, like, the point where, like, 11 o'clock is the bell at school for lunch. I would start to be shaky and hangry before that bell went, and get out of my way, move away from the fridge. I need my food. That's the way I was. And thankfully now I don't get hangry anymore, which is really, it's good. I feel more in control.
Yeah, so tell us a bit about that changeover. You said you noticed, during training and the races that you really weren't feeling good taking all these gels and things. And so at some point, presumably, something clicked, or you read something, or what made you...
On the way back from, as I was in the airport coming back from that Challenge Melbourne in 2015, I was in the airport, and you get this thing after a race where you can't stop eating. And so I was eating at the airport, and it was quite ironic. I went to a bookstore at the airport. My bike was in. I was waiting for my plane. And there was the book, The Grain Brain by Perlmutter. And I thought, oh, yeah, I've been meaning to read this. So I bought the book. And then, oh, look, there's Krispy Kremes. I can have a donut. So I'm sitting there eating this great big donut, reading The Grain Brain, which is hilarious now that I think about it. And reading it made a lot of sense. And, I think I started to question, do I really need the carbohydrates? So then I started to experiment removing them. It was kind of hard to have the courage to not do the carbo load and not take those carbohydrates, because athletes get pretty superstitious, I think. What's worked for you in the past, it's hard to, you believe even to the point where I've got to have those same socks because, I did well in that race. You become so superstitious. So it was really hard to back off on the carbs. But, after reading that book, I started doing more a low carb. I still would, have some sweet potato the night before a race, that sort of thing. But, I experimented, and I found that I felt better through training, and you have to train with a nutritional protocol that you expect to use for your race.
I was going to say that was there some kind of switchover? I mean, I can imagine what you were saying about the superstition, that aspect of it, but also, people do tend to feel a little bit rubbish when they go from a higher carb to a low carb diet. And if you're combining that with training, presumably it will have an impact on your training. So that must be difficult. You must have to get the timing of when you're going to do that right.
Yeah, I think, what I actually started doing, I did start the 5-2 diet at one stage. I used to be about 58 kilograms, and it was just ridiculous. My ex-partner and I, we went on this train trip across the country from Perth back to Sydney. And you're on this train, and it's luxurious, but what do you got to do? But free food. I'm just going to eat all this food. We got back and I was 58 kilos. That's not my normal weight. So I think I'd put on about 5 kilos in, a week's holiday.
As I say, you mentioned earlier that you're tiny. You must be tiny, because 58 kilos doesn't sound like a lot to me.
I'm only 163 centimetres or 5'2", something like that. And since being low carb, my weight just stays the same. I seem to stay around this set point of 51.5, 52 kilos. If I want to race well, I ideally would like to be a little bit lighter, but I don't care. It used to matter. I used to get on the scales all the time, but now I just think until I have an issue putting my pants on or something, I don't care. It just doesn't matter because it's just a number, and that number relates often more to how much water is in my body.
Absolutely, yeah.
Last night, I got home from my bike ride and I drank 3 bottles of 1.25 litres, the mineral water, and I was still thirsty. So, if I'd stood on the scales when I got home, maybe I was 48.5 kilos. And then after I drank all of that water, and, I didn't pee for hours and hours. Gee, I must have been pretty dehydrated. I was drinking when I was riding yesterday, but it was just so hot. So I think going back to what we're saying, that, changing over to keto, I think it was easier for me because my ex-partner and I, we did the 5-2. I couldn't sustain that. The 5-2, Mike Mosley. Yeah. We read that book
with the it's all about intermittent fasting. So the 2 basically intermittent fasting days.
Yeah, and so I think because I still train in those days, and I think that made me perhaps a little bit more metabolically flexible, I could say. But unfortunately, I couldn't continue with the 5-2. In a way I do now, but I can't go overnight without having a meal before I go to bed. Otherwise I just don't sleep. I'm just toss and turn. I'm too wound up. So it kind of speeds up my metabolism a bit too much. And I think that's gotten worse as I've gotten older. So the transition was made easier because I had done that fasting twice a week, or at least. I did notice it, not so much with triathlon, but in my martial arts, in changing over to low carb, because martial arts is more, you're using a different energy system. So sparring, it's more like sprinting. It's that short bursts of energy and power and things like that.
I was going to say, I can see that. It's a power punch. It's a quick, short snap, isn't it?
Yeah, it's less of the endurance. And I could see that, it was harder for me to get going with that. But I think as long as you always continue to put that sort of training into your routine, you'll maintain it to a degree. I definitely don't have the power power and speed that I used to. I've really slowed down, and I don't know whether that's because of my age, in aging, or because of my change in diet. But yeah, I didn't go through a huge keto flu that a lot of people describe. I guess, and I think it's because of that fasting that I'd been doing.
What did you notice with, how you felt doing the triathlons with the change of diet?
I was really, really surprised, actually. I would get to the end of a race and I didn't feel as depleted and wrecked as I used to. And I remember being absolutely amazed at, feeling ready to go in a couple of days after a race, feeling right to train again. And I remember friends of mine, I train with a club, and the guys saying, "Oh no, don't come back into training too early." I do tend to overtrain, but you're coming back too soon. You want to, give yourself plenty of time to recover. And I think, well, I actually feel fine. My recovery it really improved a lot. So that's a great thing, because if you can recover better from your training and recover better from your races, then you're ready to, improve again, ready to go. Whereas if you're needing lots of recovery time, that's time off. And so, you can lose that fitness level a little bit, I think.
Yeah, lose that momentum and presumably make it also that much more difficult to, start it up again. I don't know if have you seen the serial killers film? The second one in particular called, I think it's either Run or Running on Fat, which is funny actually because they're rowing rather than running. But they do this huge endurance. It's Sammy Reckonen, I think his name is, and his wife do this long rowing expedition. I forget the points now. I think it was from San Francisco to Hawaii or something. Does that make sense? I don't know. I've probably got my geography all wrong there, but it was an extreme long distance row over, I forget how many days, but a long time. And they did it really quite a strict keto, and they had everything, because they had to have everything on board. They had all these packs of different things like dried fish and dark chocolate and coconut oil and all sorts of things. And they said that not only did they find it easier to do the trip as they were doing it, but when they finished, it wasn't a case of, having to collapse and recover for ages. They almost felt like, turning it round and going back the other way. And they made a point of saying, and we were still getting on. We weren't filing for divorce at the end of it. So, that it just shows that it really seems to fit very, very well with endurance type sports.
Yeah. And everyone's different. It won't suit everyone. And anyone's protocol needs to be adaptable, because depending on the conditions and yourself, what you need is going to be different from day to day as well. So, that doesn't surprise. I haven't seen that movie. You
should watch it. Yeah, you'd enjoy it.
I think so. I think I heard an interview with one of them, and I thought it was quite inspirational. Yeah.
And so what you were saying about before about your weight and liking to keep a certain sort of physique, because presumably it's easier to run and to ride in particular when you're on the leaner side, to have a lighter physique is going to make life easier for you. But presumably also with the endurance, you do need a certain level of body fat as well to keep you going. Do you find it's quite a fine balance that you need to keep between the two?
I think I do. I don't think it's as difficult as you would imagine. I don't ever feel like, I've got no fat on me. I'm running out. No, I never feel like that. So I think I try and do most of my training at a low heart rate. And I think that's even when I'm racing, I'm wary not to overdo a higher heart rate, because I know that I'm just using glycogen. And I need to be staying aerobic so that I can be drawing fat. And I think everyone's got, they say, you've got enough fat to go for months without eating if you really needed to. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that I would run out of fat, but you'd probably more worried about keeping up your water and your salts. And to a degree, you'd need to burn some glucose as well. And on a longer race, I'll have a banana, and enjoy bananas. It's the only time I have bananas growing in my yard here, beautiful big bananas, and I give them away to my family. I take them to work and people love them, and I won't touch them. But if there's a race, I'll put a banana in my pouch. And a lot of the eating that I do on the bike is not eating because I need the fuel. It's eating because I need a reward. I'm getting past 20 kilometers and I'm going to eat a nut. at 20 kilometres, and then I'm riding along. Another 20 kilometres, some of this dark chocolate. I've made some pretty funny mistakes. Like I think I'm going to make a keto fuel for my bike ride for this Ironman. I was in Western Australia for the Bustleton Ironman. Anyway, I got this idea. I thought, I'll get some dark chocolate, 95% cacao, and I'll put salt in it, and I'll put MCT oil, coconut oil. And what else did I put? I put some nuts in it, macadamia nuts. I thought, yeah, that's going to be lovely. And I like to have strawberries or berries or something in the bike pouch as well, because they're water and it's a little bit of glucose as well. So, pop some strawberries in the pouch with my chocolate that I made. I very carefully cooked it up slowly. I poured it into alfoil that I've made a little mold with. I'd stayed at this a share house with some other triathlon people, and they're doing the usual, packing their gels and packing all their carbs and doing their carbo loading. And I'm going, I'm going to make something too. Anyway, so I've made this and I put it in my pouch. And I had it in a little plastic snaplock bag, and the strawberries packed there, and I had a banana. I put the banana down my tri-suit down the front. Anyway, we're cycling out there, and it's 180 kilometres out into very, very hot, windy environment. And I can think, that's right, I've got this fuel. I can have something. So I opened up the zip, and it was just melted.
I was going to say, I can see where this is going.
It was just mash. So there's other people there, like squeezing a little bit of a gel into their mouth. I think, yep, that's easy. Oh, no. Okay, so I dipped my finger into my melted chocolate. Yeah, that was nice. It was good. The salt was good. It was rewarding. But then my hands ended up like you're doing like 35 kilometres an hour on your bike, and the roads are they're rough, and you're trying to do your fuel pouch there, and the zip's getting caught on the snaplock bag, and then needless to say, I had about 120 kilometres in. You don't really care. You got salt all over your back from sweat, and yeah, pretty disgusting. But anyway, this guy gave me a funny look as he rode past me, and I thought, what? And I realised, I'd been dipping strawberries and stuff into this chocolate, and it hadn't really. My face was it was covered in chocolate. My hands were covered in chocolate, and each time I've wiped my face with chocolatey hands, it wasn't a good look. Not a good look.
Tasted good, but ended up all over the place as well.
Yeah. But that was hot. There was parts of that race that were 44 degrees and bushfires.
Yeah, that kind of heat and chocolate end up with a mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what does your general day-to-day keto look like?
Generally, I'd wake up and I have coffee, black coffee. I make a bit of, I've made this turmeric paste actually, and I put a bit of the turmeric paste in my coffee. But I try to keep it black most days. Some days, I feel a bit sooky. I'll put a bit of butter in there as well. I'll whiz it up in the blender. So coffee until 1 o'clock is coffee and water, or bubbly water. Sometimes I chew on a bit of rosemary, which is nice. But, I like to fast until about 1 o'clock, or later if I'm not hungry, but usually 1 o'clock. Usually automatically get hungry. And I think, what's the time? 1:10. That's why my stomach's rumbling.
And your training's in the morning as well, so you train fasted.
I train in the morning. I have to train morning and afternoon. Generally, most weeks I do, I guess between 15 and 20 hours triathlon, and then up to about 6-7 hours martial arts a week. And I fit my work in between. But I've been on school holidays, so it's easier to do.
Got a bit more time.
I don't know how I'm going to fit it. Yeah. So just training morning. I'd either do a swim or a bike or a run, and then go to work. I always take my lunch. Actually Mondays and Thursdays, I don't worry about it. I like to just have one meal Mondays and Thursdays because I have easy days Mondays and Thursdays. So if I do today, I'm going to probably go to the pool later on this afternoon, and that's easy. And and when I come out of the pool, I'll eat my first meal of the day. And I'll be nice and hungry then because the pool swimming makes you a bit hungry.
It does, doesn't it? I don't know why, but it does.
And it's not even like I used to think it was because your whole body got a little bit cold, but swimming in the pool here at the moment is like swimming in a bathtub. It's not cold, and people get out of the pool and stand under the shower to cool down and then get back in the pool. That's how warm it is. But anyway, I still get hungry after the pool. So one meal a day on Mondays and Thursdays generally.
Right. So, but your other days you're eating at 1. So what does your lunch and your dinner, what kind of foods do you have?
Standard lunch is, for work especially, I'll probably have 2 eggs, boiled eggs, and tin of sardines, and the size of my head, which isn't huge, but salad. It's just a stupid amount of usually like spinach, green salad, like it's spinach, parsley, whatever is easy to buy. It's usually got about 5 or 6 different green vegetables or green salad stuff with that sardines and a couple of eggs. And I always put some fermented vegetables in there. I ferment like cabbage or zucchini. I like to make kimchi, sauerkraut, that sort of stuff. That goes with my salad. And you can ask the people at work, it's always the same. What have you got today, Chrissie? Salad, fermented vegetables, sardines, and egg. Same as yesterday.
But it's good.
It's easy and it works. I know it works. And
it is easy. If you don't get bored with things, it just makes preparation easy. You don't have to think about what to do. You just prepare the same thing every day.
Well, it's kind of the same, but it's kind of different. So, sometimes I don't have fennel. Sometimes I've got celery, It's the variations in the salad. So, yeah. I do a lot of sprouting, and I've been making microgreens, growing microgreens, which is kind of a little difficult at the moment with the heat in the house, but growing like mustard seeds and little broccoli seeds and things
and
like
they
that.
pack a really nice flavour punch, don't they?
Oh, gorgeous, yeah.
Sounds delicious. So, what's for dinner? What tends to be your evening meal?
And and then I've got myself to I used to snack. So 1 o'clock, and then dinner time for me this is my problem. I really should be eating, say, 5 or 6 o'clock, but at 5 o'clock I'm usually doing something, like I'll be at the pool swimming before I've got my martial arts, and my martial arts are usually 6 till 7:30 or 7 till 8. So I'm getting home pretty late. Most nights I get home at about 8, after 8:30 even, and then that's when I eat my dinner. So that's quite late, considering I try to be in bed at 10.
But that's just a factor of your life and your schedule, and there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah, that's right. And I can't put food in and then go and train. It's got to go down a little bit. I've made the mistake of, finishing a bike ride and then having too big a lunch and then going for a run, and then it's kind of repeating on me the whole time.
Well, and it's too much for your system to do it once, isn't it? I mean, the digestive process takes a lot of energy. To try and then do something else that takes a lot of energy at the same time, one or other is going to suffer, aren't they?
Yeah. And there's you've got to experiment a little bit, because you might find that I found that if I have too much olive oil, or maybe I've just skipped back a bit on the olive oil, and also egg whites. So if I really have started enjoying just egg yolk in my salad, just raw egg yolk, no white, just separate it, and put that in. And I don't get that repeating when I have the full boiled egg and then try and run. And like if I eat at 1:00 and then I go for a run at 3:30, the egg white doesn't work for me. Garlic, I can't have had garlic. There's certain foods I can't eat on run afternoons, so got to know what you're doing next and eat the food that's appropriate for that. For dinner, so this could be 8:00 at night or 8:30 at night. I usually like to have a little bit of a salad, just because I make natto as well. Do you know natto? It's fermented soybeans.
Right. Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah. And a very small amount, because I don't want the carbs. There's carbs in soybeans, and soybeans have got a bad rap. But I buy organic soybeans, and I mix them. I ferment them.
It's one of the exceptions, though, I think. Most of the people who come down on soy, they tend to say, but there is the odd exception, and that's one of them. So,
yeah, and it's a really fantastic source of K2, which is supposed to be very good for a lot of things. For me, I have like skin issues, and so I'm trying to look after my K2 levels. I don't know if I can test it or anything, but anyway, I've been making that for, I guess, about 6 months. On the side I have, because I like to have my probiotics, so that's my natto, some kimchi or some sauerkraut, and then I'll have mostly a plate full of green vegetables and some fatty meat. My absolute favourite treat for the whole week is I go to the markets on Saturday morning, and this is where I buy all my veggies. I grow a lot of my veggies as well, as much as I can. But anyway, Saturday mornings I'm off to the markets really early because, it's a busy day Saturday. Anyway, I have a fish lady there, or fish guy, couple, and I buy fish heads, and they are awesome. And I buy 2 fish heads. They come together, and they're the salmon heads, and they're so fatty. And I looked it up. It's perfect keto. Perfect. Like, it's not too much protein, lots of fat, and that's really satisfying. I wrap it in the salmon head. I stuff it with like greens. I've got this herb that grows in my garden, and I chop that up, put that in, maybe some coriander, some ginger, some lemon, a bit of garlic, at least that, maybe a couple of little cherry tomatoes, stab them, and then I wrap that up with, before I wrap it in the banana leaf, I've been getting big pumpkin leaves and putting that either side of the head, and then rolling that up in a banana leaf. Now put it in the Weber, barbecue that's kind of like an oven. And I'll do that after a bike ride, and because you're quite hungry by the time you get home. And yeah, it is amazing. So
I'm a bit bewildered by how much of that you can eat. I know I was watching a program a while ago, and I think it was MasterChef or something, and they'd given them a challenge to take what they could off. I think it was cod, the fish head that they were using, and they took the cheeks and I think some of the throat, and there were certain places where there's some lovely meat, but
I eat everything.
Really?
Yeah, pretty much, because the cartilage, you can just chew down the cartilage. It's gorgeous. And I love that feeling in my mouth and the eyes. I never, like, when I first started doing it, I couldn't imagine eating the eyes. But then I thought, I'm going to try this. So I picked up, I put the eye in my mouth and I thought, this is really nice. So nice. It's incredible. People are just missing out. I shouldn't say anything because people be onto it. I spend $2.50 and sometimes I can get 3 meals out of 2 fish heads. So there's no need for people. People say keto is so expensive and I think rubbish. I don't need to, I eat heart. Yesterday I was talking to someone, I was at a session and there was a lady there and I said, I had heart today, so I'm going to have something really light tonight. Heart? How do you do that? And I thought, just very quickly cook it on either side. And so it's still quite rare in the middle. I want it bleeding. And then I just slice it up and put it in my salad. Easy. It's not hard. And she said, where do you buy heart? At the shop. Like, it's there. People mustn't even see it. And, you pay $1 or something for like a big chunk of ox heart or beef heart. You can't eat it all. I chop it up and give some of it to the chooks.
Yeah, I must admit, living in France, they eat a lot more bits of the animal than Brits do. In particular, like 1 ox tongue, I made 10 packets and put them in the freezer, like of portions that it's cooked up, it's ready to go. It's so easy and it's not expensive. And I think I spent, $2 or $3 on the whole ox tongue. A lot of it is how you cook it, isn't it?
Yeah, I do. I make bone broth like regularly, so I probably do 1 or 2 batches of bone broth each week. Any meats that I eat that have got bones, I store them. I put them in the freezer. I buy some bones as well from the butcher. And there's a little bit of bone left over from my salmon heads, or bits that I can't eat. That goes in as well. So, that is always like every meal. I put some bone broth into it, not lunch generally. Sometimes if I'm home and I'm doing my salad, I'll just heat up a little bit of bone broth and pour that over, and it makes the spinach and all my salad stuff shrink down a bit. It's easier to fit in your stomach then. I think it helps it digest as well. But yeah, it's a really nice background flavour, bone broth, to all your food.
And you mentioned before about the martial arts you do, and you teach as well, is that right?
Yeah, I teach Taekwondo on Saturday mornings, so I've been doing that for years, maybe 15 years I've probably been teaching. I've been doing Taekwondo. My kids got me into it. My eldest daughter wanted to do it. So, I watched them. I watched her do her first lesson. I thought, I'm joining in on this, and loved it. And I have my Taekwondo family, I have my Hapkido family, my Kumdo family, and my Triathlon family. These people that you train with, that's the best thing about these things that you do. You're part of the community. And I find teaching Taekwondo, it's such a rewarding thing to do. I am a school teacher, and that has some rewards. But when people come to your class to learn to do a martial art, you're pushing them to do something that they don't think that they can do, and then and you see them achieve things that they didn't expect to be able to achieve, and you being able to see that all the time, it's very satisfying. Yeah, I get much more from it. Like, they don't realize how much they give to me.
Right. Yes, I can see that. What kind of age groups? All age groups or a particular kind?
Yeah, we put them all in together. So my youngest usually would be 5 or 6. And yeah, I think one of Ian is probably 65. He just did his black belt. That is so inspirational.
Big range of people.
Yeah. His kids were coming to training, and I remember I used to say, Ian, you have to join in. you got to join in. I always try and pressure the parents to join in. If they think they're just sending their kids, I think, I don't just sit there and watch, just jump in. You may as well. You're here. Come on. Anyway, and he joined in, and it's so good to see someone who's mature, and so it is harder to learn things as you get older, and he just stuck with it and really focused. And I think that's so good for his kids to see that persistence. And they would know, like, it's not easy for him. He's older, you know, your joints and your mobility's very different as you get older. I'm very proud of my students, as you can tell.
I was going to say, I can tell. So tell me about the Kokoda challenge you mentioned when we were having a chat before this interview. That sounded fantastic.
Okay. One of the really rewarding things as a school teacher I've been doing each year is there's this challenge called Kokoda Challenge. So it's a challenge. It's really the kids take it as a physical challenge. They perceive it as a physical challenge. It's a 96-kilometre hike, which is the distance that the Kokoda Trail in Papua New Guinea, which is one of the major battles in the war. And we have near Brisbane here, down the Gold Coast, a trail which is similar in elevation and difficulty as the Kokoda Trail. I've been to Papua New Guinea and done it there as well. But we take kids on this Kokoda challenge, and it's astounding, like, what they can learn from just hiking. And it's so challenging, and the elevation and the heat and walking through the night takes us about 30 to 36 hours. I think 39 hours is the cutoff. And I have a couple of times been a little bit worried that we weren't actually going to finish by the cutoff time. But anyway, you're walking with these kids, and it can get a little bit ugly. You know, it's 1 o'clock in the morning and we're hiking up. There's a point called the Slippery Peg, and the slope that you're walking on is so muddy. You pick up your boot, and you've got about 1 kilo of slimy mud on it. So you pick it up and you bang it on the ground to get the mud off, and then you put it down, and then you pick up your other foot, and then it's slimy mud, and it's enough. And each step, you seem to be sliding back down the hill a little bit. So it's really, really very, very challenging. And the kids really find it very tough. And they train for it. And part of the training is, like, near the school, we've got a forest, and they do this training through the forest. And it hiking overnight and over that time and distance, they've not really... it doesn't mentally prepare you. So the thing that I think people don't realize is, you know, human beings can do so much, but what stops us is what we believe we can do. We can all run faster, you know, we just don't believe we can run faster. And until you kind of have that picture in your mind of yourself doing it and thinking of a way and imagining yourself doing it, then you can't do it. And then suddenly you break through and you can do it. And for these kids, and they do this 96 kilometres hiking, and, you know, they are exhausted. They are absolutely spent at the end. And to watch them march across that finish line, and at the finish line, usually their parents come, and it's dark and it's the next day, and we've been hiking since Saturday morning. We might be starting at 6:30 in the morning, and we're finishing the next day in the dark, and they're crossing that line. And I have to go at the back because the tears are rolling down my face each time to see what these kids have accomplished in that time. And that's one of those really, really rewarding things.
That's incredible. So there's no stopping. I know when you first mentioned it, this 96K, I had visions of, a sleepover halfway through or something.
No sleeps. I think sometimes we sleep as we walk. We stop and eat. So we try to keep the stops below less than half an hour, change socks, things like that. And it's freezing cold at night in some of the spots. You're at the top of, there's a place at Beachmont called Army Place, or I can't remember. Anyway, I can remember I needed to change all my clothes because I'd sweated and I was so salty and I had chafing, and I'm standing at the top of that hill. And you have a support crew, and they drive to the different spots, and they meet you, and they've got the food that you've prepared on. And yeah, you hope that they're there, the food is hot, and they're ready to go. You hope that's going to happen. Anyway, so I'm standing there and with one of the parents who was in our support crew. He's holding up a big towel so that I can pull down my gear and change my pants. And I'm just thinking, why are you holding the towel up? It's ridiculous. The wind is blowing. There's lights and everything. I think, somebody's going to have to just see my bare bum in this freezing cold. I don't care. It can be really, really cold. -5. Well, for us, it's cold. -5 degrees, something like that. But then during the day, it's so hot. So it is a real challenge.
Yeah, that's a real challenge going from one extreme to another, isn't it? And what age group are these kids?
The youngest I've taken is 15, Ali. Yeah, and that was fantastic for him. Normally we wouldn't let the juniors. There are shorter races hikes, like 48 kilometre, 30 kilometre, and a 15. So we can take, the year 7 and year 8s to the shorter ones, but generally 15 to 17 year olds for the 96 kilometre. It's pretty arduous, and I wouldn't expect the younger ones to do that. But we did take that 15-year-old. He was really quite fit and done a lot of training.
That must be an incredible thing, though, for a young person of that age to achieve. Really must set them up.
It really is. And yeah, I think it changes their perspective. After you can see that they stand taller and hold their heads higher. They come back to school, and you can see that's what you want from it. You want them to get that self-confidence from setting a goal and achieving it.
What an incredible thing to do. Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. We're going to wrap up now with your top tip.
Okay, well, my top tip is to make sure that you plan. You have to plan. You can't just, hope that everything is going to be fine. So for me, going back to work now, I know the main thing is to plan my lunches. So organize yourself so that you can make a healthy lunch, and that's something that you can enjoy each day, unless you're fasting, of course. But so plan. I have in my cupboard, I know on Saturdays I've got all my sardines ready. I'll boil my eggs Sunday night, ready for the week. And you plan, it makes it easier, and you're not stuck there thinking, what am I going to get that's going to be keto, or what's going to fit? I hope I don't get the wrong oils or something on my salad if I'm buying it. I think it's worthwhile packing your lunch. Always pack your lunch. I'll go to a PD and they're providing lunch. I'm not eating that. No way. I'm not leaving it. Maybe if I see some cheese or something, I'll have a go at it, but I'm not going to rely on other people or convenience of buying food. It's pack your lunch.
Yeah, that's a great tip, and it rings true just with with everything that you do with your training, it just sounds like an overall philosophy that works for you, this preparation, this planning, and sticking to those plans.
Yeah. Be consistent with it. I know my lunch is going to have those greens, and it's going to have my sardines, it's going to have my probiotics, or, my fermented vegetables. That's it. I know that I'm getting something that works for me. There's no risk. I'm not going to have to be worried. Like, there's nothing worse than regret. Don't you agree? Like, oh, I wish I did this, or I wish I'd just don't. You can avoid all of that by, planning, preparing.
Absolutely. And it's also essential for you to know that you're going to feel well for your next training session, your next race. You can't afford to end up with an upset tummy or something because you've grabbed something when you're out, like you say, that might have things in it that don't agree with you. And and I'm a strong believer in real food. Like, if you don't know what your food is made of, if there's some chemicals, or it's made of something that's not even food, like most of the rubbish in the supermarkets. You don't want to put that into yourself because you don't. What is it? It's not going to help you. So, pack healthy food and enjoy healthy food. Like, and if you have that as a habit, like I don't know. Like, I used to enjoy fruit, and I know that, I probably would enjoy fruit still, but I really enjoy. I taste the sweetness in cauliflower. I taste the sweetness in so many things that I probably would never have realized had such amazing flavors. The flavors change when you change over to keto, don't you? Yeah,
agree?
for sure. Your sensitivity to, like you say, that natural sweetness is that in so many things, and becomes too sweet with some foods that actually, I don't want to eat those anymore.
No, and you don't perceive them as food anymore. Like a lot of rubbish that you see sitting on I wouldn't say rubbish, but the stuff that you see at the staff meetings, and, somebody's done baking and everything, and you think, oh, it's not really food. Laura.
Not for me, no. And it's not going to be fuel for your next Ironman, or should I say Iron Woman? I think they need to.
No, I think Ironman's fine. When you cross over the line, they say, Chrissie Bowie, you are an Ironman. Oh, it's so good.
I'll take it, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, you are an absolute inspiration, and it's been fantastic talking to you today. Thank you so much, Chrissie.
Oh, thank you.
To get the resources and links from the show, please go to ketowomanpodcast.com. Are you my next extraordinary woman? Maybe you've got an idea for a show, a topic you want to hear about. Let me know how I can tickle your earbuds by dropping me a line at daisy@ketowomanpodcast.com. If you fancy joining me on this exciting adventure and want to help me create new episodes, please go to my Patreon page at patreon.com/KetoWoman, or simply hit the support button on the Keto Woman website. It's thanks to the two keto dudes that I'm hosting this podcast, so please consider heading to their Patreon page at patreon.2keto.com and help them bring you more podcasts like this one. This week's quote is from Shalane Flanagan, a US Olympic marathoner. Don't be afraid to dream of achieving the impossible. Bye-bye, Keto Lovelies.